Hi there, welcome to Across the Balkans. I'm Nafisa Latic. Around the world, governments are grappling with the growing influence of TikTok and other social media platforms. Concerns over the spread of hate speech, violent content, and their impact on children have led to sweeping restrictions and even outright bans. After several incidents in which TikTok videos were to blame, Albania joined the list and imposed a year-long ban on TikTok. But can these actions truly curb the rising incidence of violence? Or do they infringe on fundamental rights, including the freedom of speech? In this episode, we look into the debate that is dividing societies, the role of social media in shaping our youth, and the fine line between protection and censorship. But first, Omer Saraci reports from Tirana.
TikToku është rrugaçi i lagjes që ne kemi frikë që fëmia të shoqërohet me të kur del nga shtëpia. Dhe ne TikTokun do ta mbyllim për një vit. TikTok në Republikën e Shqipërisë nuk do ketë.
Prime Minister Edi Rama has announced a ban on social media giant TikTok in his action plan for safety on school premises.
Nuk është vetëm TikToku, janë shumë aplikacione apo rrjete sociale të tjera që duhen kontrolluar, por TikToku duke qenë se është më i ndjeshëm dhe mendoj që ka mungesë filtrash, po duhet një qasje ndryshe, jo drastike, jo duke bërë mbyllje.
Ndoshta nuk do zgjidhë shumë gjëra, por të paktën do frenoj, sepse mendoj që çdo njeri tashmë mund të dilte e lirshëm, të shprehesh e lirshëm dhe jepesh një hapësirë, një vëmendje e cila nuk shfrytëzohet për mirë.
Sikur problemet dhe fenomenet negative të zgjidheshin duke mbyllur aplikacione, rrjete sociale, teknologji, një ditë mund mbyllim televizor, një ditë mund mbyllim radio, një ditë mund mbyllim gjithë nëpër shtëpia, siç ishte pandemia do të ishte zgjidhje mirë, por bota ka rezultuar që mbylljet nuk janë asnjëherë të mira sepse ndonjëherë mbylljet krijojnë dëshirë për të pasur më shumë gjëra.
The Albanian government decided to shut down TikTok after a long consultation with 65,000 parents, 90% of whom requested that their children should not have access to the social media platform. The decision came in the wake of a tragic murder of a 14-year-old near the premises of a school in the capital Tirana.
Këtë rrugaç ne do ta përzëm nga lagja jonë për një vit. TikToku në kin promovon se si nxënësit bëjnë mirë mësimet, se si ruhet natyra, se si është tradita. Në TikTokun jashtë kinës vetëm lum dhe vetëm qeneri. Çfarë duhet ne kjo?
The platform will no longer be accessible in Albania for any age. It is all part of a plan to enhance physical and digital security in schools.
The Chinese company TikTok has already reacted. It wants more evidence to support the reasons why the Albanian government has blocked the platform for a year.
Following Tirana's decision, TikTok asked for urgent clarity from the Albanian government in the case of the stopped teenager. The company said it had found no evidence that the perpetrator or victim had TikTok accounts, and multiple reports have in fact confirmed videos leading up to the incident were being posted on another platform, not TikTok. But is the closure of TikTok the right response? Can it be blamed for incidences of violence among minors?
Interneti nuk fiket në këtë shekullin e globalizmit. Ai do të ekzistojë. Ajo që kemi ne në dorë është të rregullojmë raportet dhe marrëdhëniet me qoftë me TikTokun, i cili këto kohët e fundit në Shqipëri është bërë problem. Unë mendoj që metodat mekaniciste të ndërprerjes, të shkëputjes, të ndalimit nuk janë efektive. Në këtë kohë moderne, postmoderne, në këtë shoqëri globale ato nuk mund të fiken. Ajo që kemi ne në dorë është të rregullojmë marrëdhëniet, raportet e përdorimit të tyre nga fëmijët dhe nga të rriturit.
But not everyone agrees. Some see it as a way of gaining useful votes.
Banning TikTok comes as a decision from the Prime Minister only 5 months prior to general elections. So there is a clear link between this decision and the fact that TikTok is the only social media that is not under the control of the Prime Minister.
This is not the first time the Prime Minister has attempted to censor the media in Albania.
A few years back, he introduced a piece of legislation, but he was not able to pass that because the European Union forcibly asked and demanded Mr. Rama to stop this from being adopted in Parliament. There are also other international bodies who follow media that say that Albania is worsening its ranks in freedom of speech, and we have had direct threats from the Prime Minister, from the Mayor of Tirana against journalists.
Addressing children's problematic relationship with the internet is clearly vital, but many believe the government must respect freedom of speech. More than anyone else, it is the government's duty to balance safety and rights, navigating the complex path responsibly. Omer Saraci, across the Balkans, Tirana.
Serbia is also considering social media bans, but for now it's focusing more on online safety. According to a recent report in Serbia, more than 70% of children as young as 11 years old have social media accounts despite age restrictions. Experts believe it is causing mental health issues, with nearly 25% of children suffering from anxiety or depression. Many feel pressured by the idealized lives they see online, leading to feelings of failure and loneliness. Katarina Petrovic reports from Belgrade.
At 12 years old, he was just another kid with a smartphone. By 16, he was stealing thousands of euros from his father to gamble, party, and keep up with the influencers he admired online.
Ja sam sa 12 godina instalirao TikTok, Instagram i Facebook. To sam koristio 2,5 godine, 3 do 15 godina sam koristio te društvene mreže. Da sam bio nešto, nisam ni na pameti to, i poslije kad sam krenuo gledam te neke YouTube koji kockaju, koji drogiraju se, koji voze kao skup auto na autoputu, idu u klub, plate se parani sami, slikaju koliko mi para.
By 16, he was heavily addicted to online gambling, and that was the first time he stole from his father. It wasn't the last.
Onda sam uzeo iz tatov štek prvi put 500 €, platili tiket koliko 200-300 €, taj tiket mi je prošao, posle toga uzeo još para kad sam te pare pukao na kopskom, sam uzeo pare da idem u klub, nisam išao, mislim minimum čas je 500 €, da bi ja sve platio sam, da bi ja častio tamo i djevojke i drugare i sve. Onda je pala ideja, bili smo na nekom snimku kako neko vozi auto, tata mi nije tu bio preko, i sam jeo auto, još sam na autoputu, vozio na gazeri, gdje nisam vozio 220, snimao na storiju, kapšio to, vozio drugare drugarice.
In Serbia, phones and social media aren't just part of growing up, they're shaping futures. The question isn't if this is happening, it's how long before we realize the damage that starts before kids even hit their teens. For psychologist Jelena Manojlović, this isn't unusual. She says it starts young, sometimes as early as 6 or 7.
Deca već sa 5, 6, 7 godina već uveliko igraju igrice, ne znam, koriste neke društvene mreže, tipa Snapchat, tipa TikTok, YouTube, ne znam, Instagram, šta god. Sve što je umereno korištenje je dobro. Kada pređe iz umerenog u patologiju, to je nevalje.
41% of Serbian children aged 9 to 10 are already active on social media, and 72% of those aged 11 to 12 regularly use platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Nearly a quarter of Serbian youth struggle with anxiety linked to social media consumption.
Ja sam prvo tražila telefon, pa me tata iznenadio, kao rekao je da ide da kupi sendvič, ali u stvari je kupio telefon. U mom razredu imamo 3 osobe koje koriste telefon. Nama učiteljica brani telefon, imamo digitalni svet, ali još ne koristimo telefone i kompjuteri.
Even at 7, phones are a part of life, but there's a fine line between fun and danger. Jelena explains that for many kids, the screen becomes their world.
TikTok je uveo da isto osobe ispod 18 godina ne smiju da koriste aplikacije za ulepšavanje. Upravo zato što su prepoznali problematiku, prepoznali su to da internet u prekomernoj konzumaciji dovodi do problema. Deca od 16 godina koriste kreme za 40-godišnjake, mislim, apsolutno neverovatno.
Australia recently banned social media for children under 16, aiming to combat rising mental health issues. Countries like the UK, Ireland, and France are now considering similar restrictions. After the tragic shooting at Vladislav Ribnikar Primary School in Belgrade, some children used TikTok filters to trivialize the tragedy, choosing between victims and the shooter. Serbia has not proposed any bans on social media for minors. Instead, the focus has been on promoting digital literacy through educational initiatives and parental guidance. Reports show that nearly 60% of Serbian teenagers spend over 3 hours daily on social media, contributing to increased rates of anxiety, depression, and internet addiction.
Baš sam bio zaista od toga i to se sve vidi na Instagramu, TikToku, to se događa. Ja nisam išao u školu zbog tog takvog života što sam radio sve, nisam išao u školu godinu dana.
Now he's 6 months into treatment for gambling addiction and social media dependency. But not every kid gets help in time. For Serbia and the rest of the world, the question remains, how long should we leave the screen on before we pull the plug? Katarina Petrović, Across the Balkans, Belgrade.
I want to bring in Denis Kenji Kipker from Frankfurt now. He is a research director at Cyber Intelligence Institute. Denis, great to have you on Across the Balkans. I mean, there is no doubt that social media can negatively impact children if we don't have certain mechanisms in place. But is banning the platform completely a solution?
Yeah, so while social media undeniably poses risks to children, a blanket ban, in my opinion, may not be the most effective solutions, because such a measure could limit children's access to valuable educational resources, hinder also their social development, and drive online activity into very unregulated and potentially also more harmful spaces than social media platforms, and possibly a more nuanced approach, such as parental controls, comprehensive digital literacy education, may be more beneficial here.
Yeah, and what would be then viable alternatives to a complete ban that would address these concerns properly and effectively?
Yeah, so we could talk about robust age verification systems, if technically feasible, which are currently also planned by a new law that was made in Australia. There would also be the chance for stricter content moderation policies on these platforms, and also some parental control features that allow the parents to monitor and also limit the children's online activity, especially time-wise. And this task of the state is to have a comprehensive digital literacy education program, and that teach also children about online safety and responsible social media use, and also more collaborative effects between tech companies, policymakers, and also educators to create a safer online environment for everyone.
Right, but there is a lot of talk about TikTok particularly in the region recently. There have been several incidents, deadly incidents. TikTok was involved or the way it impacted what took place. Unfortunately, very sad incidents. How does TikTok compare to other social media platforms in terms of data collections or potential misuse?
Yeah, so regarding TikTok, this app has definitely faced some more scrutiny for its data collection practices, also including concerns about potential access to user data by the Chinese government institutions. And while data collection is quite common across social media platforms, TikTok has definitely very extensive data collection policies that every user has to agree on. And that means sensitive information like location data is collected, browsing history, and even keystrokes. And this raises, of course, more concerns about the potential of misuse, such as targeted advertising, manipulation of user behavior, and even national security threats, as it is currently argumented in the United States and in many other states all around the world.
So let me put this like in a simple way. If you're a minor and you join TikTok, are there any mechanisms in place to prevent you from reaching out the content that might not be appropriate for you?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a big problem because TikTok has not a real content control. And this is also why the platform has faced significant scrutiny regarding the handling of minors' data. And while the platform has implemented some really low-level safeguards, concerns remain about the extent and nature of this data collection. And this is also why critics argue that TikTok collects not only excessive amounts of user data, but also collects data of very sensitive people here, and children's personal data is particularly worthy of protection. And so far, TikTok has really done too little in terms of the transparency of decisions, informations, and algorithms on the platform to inform particularly vulnerable user groups about the risks.
Yeah, but how can we make TikTok responsible for this? I mean, they have responsibility for protecting youngest users and how to make their practices in line with global practices for youth safety.
Yeah, so generally speaking, TikTok has a significant responsibility to protect its youngest users. So while they have implemented some safeguards, as I mentioned, concerns remain about the adequacy of these measures. And critics argue that data collection practices are overly broad and the platform's algorithm may inadvertently expose minors to harmful content and influence authors' behavior in negative ways. And whether TikTok's current measures align with global best practices for youth safety remains definitely a subject of ongoing political debate, societal debate, and scrutiny.
Right. I mean, while we wait for TikTok to improve these practices, we have more and more incidents involving TikTok, as we've seen in the previous stories. So you said the banning TikTok is not the solution, but maybe if more countries join Albania, for example, or Australia, that means millions of users less for TikTok. Maybe this is the way to pressure TikTok to address the concerns more quickly.
Yeah, this can definitely be the case, but to effectively protect young users, parents should also engage in open conversations about online safety. It's not about only the regulator, and they should also set clear limits on screen time, monitor their children's online activity, and possibly utilize parental control features. And regulators, they should work with the platform very strong to implement stricter content moderation policies, and they should also control the data privacy safeguards by local laws. And also they have the task to promote digital literacy as a task for the whole society to empower young users to navigate the online world safely and critically. It's not only about just talking about the ban. That's a problem.
Yeah, so every country, it feels to me that everyone has different approach to this matter. Is there a country, the government, that you would argue could be an example in the way addressing the social media usage for youngsters and minors? What would be a good example if not a ban?
Yeah, so for example, in the European Union, there's a relatively strong platform regulation, which is called the Digital Services Act. And this platform regulation requires for concrete questions and transparency methods, for example, regarding the algorithms of these platforms. And they have to monitor the practices, and they have to work very closely with the cooperative authorities in the respective member states. And this could be one approach to say we need more control about the platforms. We need more control about the content on the platforms without banning it completely.
Mm-hmm. What do you make of the approach that the U.S. has towards TikTok? As we know, Joe Biden's administration plans to ban TikTok starting January 19th. President-elect Donald Trump is against this. He thinks this can be solved through political means. How different is this approach, and how will the U.S.'s decision to ban or not to ban TikTok impact the way this issue is addressed around the world?
Yeah, on the one hand, both US presidents stand for an improvement in domestic security. We know that. And on the other hand, Donald Trump also knows that he has a lot of followers on TikTok. And that he can also attract the sympathy of young people if he stops the impending TikTok ban in the United States. And in the United States, the app has 170 million users, so really a lot of people. And it also gives Mr. Trump enormous political clout when he stops the bans. So Trump has already applied to suspend the ban, and it does not seem unlikely that he will continue to pursue this policy for the time being. But I'm quite sure that a lot of states all around the world are currently looking on how this legal and political debate will be finished in the United States. And if the United States decide to ban TikTok completely, this will definitely have also impacts on other global markets where you can download the app as well.
I do want to bring in there are so many social media platforms with similar algorithms like TikTok. Do you think that TikTok particularly, because of its links to China, has been politicized and used in a different way than other social media social media platforms?
Yeah, this is definitely the case. So the strong ties of TikTok to China have raised all these data privacy concerns. And because social media platforms naturally collect a lot of data, you have the case that governments argue, people argue, and also legislators, politicians argue that the data is not secure and safe. So it might be misused for online espionage, or also creating profiles of highly visible politicians when using these apps. And currently, we have to state that the data protection regulations in the Chinese government are not the same as, for example, in the United States or in the European Union or in some other Western countries. And this is why we have these high political stakes when it comes about the debate of TikTok.
As a, let's say, expert in a matter, at the end, I want to ask you if you're a parent, I don't know if you're a parent, but if you were a parent, what would be your advice to all the parents out there on while the governments decide how to proceed with the matter, what could they do? What is something that we could all do to protect young people who are in such a sensitive period of time, and all this can impact them in a really negative way?
Yeah, so I have to admit I'm not a parent, but
I assume.
But I can definitely say it's all about digital literacy. So we will not be able to protect minors and young users only by a complete platform ban. So they must understand the content. They must also be able to assess whether, for example, some content would be disinformation. So it's also the task of the parents to give, so for example, examples of disinformation, to show children that there might be social media bubbles and that you can also possibly not always find the truth on these social media channels. And I think it's all about awareness for minors and children when it comes to the use of big social media platforms.
Mm-hmm. So is also the way you limit the time spent on internet a good approach to this? Not to have your child like completely, I mean, I know it's not good to be on screen throughout the day, but is this also a good option to limit the time spent online?
Yeah, this is also an approach some countries are currently taking, and surprisingly, China is one of the countries saying that the screen time of minors must be limited in a day, and this can definitely be a possibility, but it's difficult on how to control it. So this is not something that authorities can say to families or to minors. There are no administrative regulations regarding this. This would be something also associated with the whole topic of digital awareness, digital literacy, not to spend a lot of time a day on those social media platforms without, for example, being a content creator.
Dennis Kenji Kipker, a research director at Cyber Intelligence Institute. Thank you so much for your insights for us on Across the Balkans. I'm sure parents could hear some good advices from you on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
And thanks for watching this episode. See you next time from me and the whole team here in Istanbul. Bye-bye for now. Take care.